Welcome to my video on how to shorten coat sleeves. I found this beautiful coat, and always the sleeves are too long on any coat that I get, unless I get a petite. Hit me at the fingers instead of where it needs to. So I actually need to remove 3 inches from these sleeves. Alright, so I know that I need 3 inches off. And so my first idea was to just shorten the sleeve and move this cuff detail up 3 inches. But then I have an issue, and here's my issue. It's this snap. So if I remove the snap, I have, I could probably leave this snap and just put another snap in that would meet it, but here's the issue. So it's right at that 3-inch mark, and so when I remove this grommet, it's going to leave a hole. And it's going to be right there where I want my fold to be. So I am thinking, all right, that's a lot of work on my part. One, having to move the cuff up, hem it. We also have the inside lining. So I'm thinking instead, I'm going to shorten it here at the shoulder. What I would have to do is reduce this down 3 inches all the way around. So we're going to seam rip it out, and then this would be my new sew line. I'm actually going to start with the inside lining as I seam rip it out, but before I actually start to seam rip, I'm going to put color coordinating pins along the 2 sides, so once it's separated I can line it back up. So taking my time, I'm going to seam rip all the way around and remove the lining. Once the lining is removed, I'm going to measure down 3 inches from the sew line to my next sew line, keeping my measuring stick perpendicular to the actual seam. And I'm using a colored marker, actually a paint pen here, so it'll show up on the black lining and I won't lose my mark. And this is on the inside of the lining, so you won't be able to see that once I'm actually through. Then I'll use my seam ripper to remove the sleeve from the body of the coat. And using the same paint pen on the wrong side of the material, I'll go ahead and mark around my 3 inches where I want to cut. This to me was the terrifying part, where I actually cut the material. Make sure you leave whatever seam lengths that you would like. Don't cut on the actual line. At this point, I pinned right sides together with the sleeve and the body. And then I decided, hey, why not just go ahead and sew the body lining at the same time? And this is not how it was originally put together, but I think it's going to save me a step in the end. So here you can see where we need to line all of those yellow pins that we put together at the beginning together. So this is just kind of our marker, so everything kind of goes back in the same spot. But here you can see where the lining, the sleeve, and the body have all been pinned together. And then the idea is to take the sleeve lining, overlap it, and hand stitch that at the end. It's time to choose your thread. I'm using a medium weight polyester thread for this project with the wool coat. Silk thread also works well with wool. Looking at the outside of the coat before it's sewn, I'm just going to use a straight stitch. I'm setting my machine at a 2.8 stitch length. So just make sure that you test your stitch before you sew. find any stray threads, snip them off. And then, of course, make sure you repeat the process for the other sleeve. Finally, we have the sleeve lining that we need to attach. So this is going to be hand sewed. We first need to pull it through, find our markers, and pin it over the top of our machine stitch. I'm turning over a seam allowance and then just pinning it right over our sew line so that you can't see it, kind of a hidden stitch all the way around. And then we'll do a blind hand stitch all the way around the sleeve. There we go. You're going to need black thread and a needle. So just tie a knot in one end of the thread. You don't want to double thread. And I like to hide the tail end where my knot is inside, that's going to be hidden by the lining. So I take a hidden stitch inside, and then that tail where the knot is, we're just going to tuck it up into the lining so that once we sew it, you won't see it, and also your knot won't come loose. And so whenever we want to take these blind stitches, we're taking one tiny stitch on the sleeve lining and then attaching it to the lining of the body. And so just tiny little stitches to pull them together. And then, of course, you've got to go all the way around the sleeve. And so this is the blind stitch when you're through. This is the inside of the coat. And of course, we need to remember to do the other sleeve. And as you finish up, make sure that you go back and you check for any pins that were left behind. So here's the finished product. Love the length of the sleeves. I love the fact that I didn't have to touch the cuff. And it just feels good. So I hope you enjoyed this how-to video.